The bank manager mocked the plainly dressed woman and tore up her check, never realizing she was the investor who had helped save the bank. Yvonne Barbosa felt her hands shake, not from fear, but from disbelief. The branch manager, Rodrigo Fonseca, flawless in his tailored Italian suit, snatched the check from her fingers. The amount was $820,000. He stamped it declined with unnecessary force, tore it into pieces in front of everyone, and tossed the scraps into the trash with a kind of contempt that seemed to cut through the entire lobby. He thought he was destroying a worthless piece of paper. What he did not know was that he was signing the end of his own career. For Yvonne, that morning had begun like any other. She woke up at 5:30 a.m., put on her faded jeans and plain cotton blouse. No jewelry, no makeup. At 45, she knew that real wealth does not need display cases. Before heading to the bank, she served breakfast at a neighborhood shelter. Her hands still carried the faint scent of soap when she pushed open the glass doors of the private banking branch in downtown Miami. Yvonne adjusted the strap of her canvas bag and walked to the service counter. The teller, Carla, widened her eyes when she saw the number on the check. $820,000. The protocol was clear. Any check above $500,000 required branch manager approval. Rodrigo came down from the mezzanine, saw Yvonne from a distance, and judged her immediately. Simple clothes, worn sneakers, old tote bag. The expression on his face barely changed, but the contempt was there. He did not even invite her to sit down. He held the check between two fingers as if it were dirty. "You're trying to deposit this check?" he asked in a tone soaked with arrogance. "Yes," Yvonne replied. "It's payment from a development firm that owed me money. You can verify it." Her voice was steady, respectful, and firm. Rodrigo pulled up her account profile. Basic checking account. Average balance, $12,000. He frowned. "Ms. Barbosa," he said, folding his arms, "what exactly do you do for a living?" "I have a few businesses." "A few businesses?" Rodrigo repeated with a cynical smile. "You walk in here dressed like that, carrying a thrift store bag, and you expect me to believe a construction company paid you nearly $1 million? Either you got that check from someone else, or you're trying to deposit something that doesn't belong to you." Two people in line stopped to listen. Carla looked uncomfortable. Yvonne felt her blood rise, but she kept her posture calm. "Mr. Fonseca, I came here in good faith. The check is legitimate. Please verify it. But there is no need to speak to me like this." "Speak to you like this?" Rodrigo raised his voice even more, making sure half the lobby could hear him. "Do you think I'm required to accept any piece of paper somebody walks in with? I'm not risking my reputation for someone who doesn't even look like she should be receiving that kind of money." The words landed like blades. Yvonne had felt that sting before, more than 20 years earlier, when she worked as a house cleaner and tried to open her first bank account. "So, you're refusing to deposit my check?" she asked. "I am." Then the unthinkable happened. Rodrigo tore the check in half, then into quarters, and dropped the pieces into the trash can beside the counter. "You can leave now," he said coldly. "And next time, don't waste my time with questionable paperwork." A heavy silence fell over the bank. Yvonne stood still, her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back immediately. She would not cry in front of him. "All right," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. "You just tore up an $820,000 check. But don't worry, Mr. Fonseca, you just tore up far more than that." Then she turned and walked out. She kept her dignity. Her legs were shaking, but she did not run. While Rodrigo returned to his office wearing the smug smile of a man who believed he had protected the bank, Yvonne stood on the sidewalk and pulled her phone from her bag. Something inside her had shifted. It was no longer anger. It was resolve. For 20 years she had built everything in silence. Now it was time to show who she really was. "Mr. Santana, this is Yvonne Barbosa. I need an urgent meeting with the board at Atlantic Heritage Bank about the matter we discussed. I've made my decision. Let's move forward." Yvonne returned to the small apartment where she had lived for 23 years. 2 bedrooms, a modest living room, family photos on the wall. One showed her at 20, holding her daughter, Leticia, in her arms. Another showed her at 30, wearing a janitorial uniform, exhausted but still hopeful. The story Rodrigo could never have imagined was this. At 18, Yvonne had Leticia after being abandoned by her boyfriend. At 20, she lost both of her parents and found herself alone in the world with a 2-year-old daughter. She did not give up. She cleaned 2 houses a day and sold homemade cakes on weekends. Every dollar she saved was for Leticia and for the future. At 25, with $8,000 in savings, she noticed something most people ignored. Construction companies were always complaining that they could not find dependable post-construction cleaning crews. So she started Golden Lily Services, just herself and 2 friends. Her difference was simple: absolute punctuality and obsessive quality. At 28, she landed her first major contract with a large developer. It was worth $52,000. Her hands shook when she signed the agreement. She finished the work ahead of schedule. The owner of the company, Mr. Almeida, called her in afterward. "Yvonne, you have real talent. You shouldn't stop at cleaning." He became an informal mentor. By 35, Golden Lily Services was bringing in $1.2 million a year. But Yvonne never changed. She stayed in the same apartment. She wore the same practical clothes. The money went into the business, Leticia's education, and a solid reserve fund. At 38, she created IB Holdings, an investment company that backed small neighborhood businesses. She helped local families open bakeries. She financed auto shops. She offered fair terms and real support. By 40, IB Holdings had stakes in 17 small and mid-sized businesses. Her net worth had climbed into the millions, but almost no one knew it. Then came the deal that changed everything. 8 months earlier, Mr. Almeida invited Yvonne to become a minority partner in a luxury development project. She invested $800,000. The profit was extraordinary. Her share came to exactly $820,000, the exact amount Rodrigo Fonseca had just torn to pieces. Sitting on her couch, Yvonne looked down at her phone. There was one secret Rodrigo, and almost no one else at the bank, knew. 3 months earlier, the bank had been facing a severe liquidity crisis. To raise emergency capital, it issued debt notes to private investors. Yvonne bought 2.4 million of those notes. She was, by herself, the largest individual private note holder. That gave her leverage, and according to the agreement she had reviewed line by line with Mr. Santana, that leverage gave her the right to demand changes in management in cases of serious misconduct. Yvonne took the torn pieces of the check she had quietly retrieved from the trash. Carla, the teller, ashamed of what she had witnessed, had discreetly helped her collect them. That night, Yvonne pieced the check back together and photographed everything. It was proof. For 23 years, she had built in silence. Now she was ready to speak. Thursday, 10 a.m., 10th floor. Boardroom of Atlantic Heritage Bank. Yvonne walked in, wearing a simple navy suit. At the table sat CEO Harold Drummond, Chief Operating Officer Mariana Ellis, and General Counsel Philip Mercer. "Ms. Yvonne Barbosa, welcome," Harold said. "We are fully aware of the importance of your role in the bank's recent financial recovery." Yvonne placed the reconstructed check on the table. "I'm here because I believe this bank can be better," she said, "and because I know I'm not the only person this has happened to." For 12 straight minutes she spoke. By the time she finished, the CEO looked pale. The executives were stunned. "Ms. Barbosa," Harold said, "on behalf of Atlantic Heritage Bank, I offer you our deepest apology. What happened is unacceptable." "Thank you," Yvonne replied, "but I didn't come here only for an apology. I want Mr. Rodrigo Fonseca brought into this room right now." 3 minutes later, the door opened. Rodrigo walked in confidently, saw the executives, saw the lawyer, and then saw Yvonne. He froze. The color drained from his face. The woman he had humiliated was now sitting in the boardroom. "Mr. Fonseca," Harold said sharply, "take a seat. Can you explain how you tore up a legitimate $820,000 check in front of a client?" Mariana cut in before he could gather himself. And why exactly did you make that decision? I thought the check was suspicious, Rodrigo stammered. She came in wearing simple clothes, and that is your criterion for destroying a valid financial instrument, Philip asked coldly. Since when is a person's appearance a justification for humiliating them and destroying legitimate documents? Rodrigo lowered his head. He had no answer. Harold opened another file. Mr. Fonseca, we've discovered this is not your first incident. There are already 3 prior complaints against you for mistreating customers whom, according to your own wording, did not fit the premium profile. Rodrigo felt the room collapse around him. Mariana looked directly at him. Mr. Fonseca, Ms. Yvonne Barbosa holds $2.4 million in the bank's debt notes. She is the largest individual private investor who helped stabilize this institution. When you humiliated her, you disrespected one of the people who helped keep this bank standing. I didn't know, he murmured, barely audible. For the first time since he entered the room, Yvonne spoke. You should not have needed to know. Her voice was calm, but it hit him harder than any shout. You should have treated me with respect, regardless of who I was, what I had in my account, or what clothes I wore. Respect is not a privilege for the wealthy. It is a right for everyone. Then Yvonne told him what prejudice had cost her 23 years earlier. It almost made me quit, she said. But how many people really do quit? How many talents are wasted because someone judges them by appearances? Harold Drummond's eyes were wet by then. He made the decision. Mr. Fonseca, you are suspended for 30 days without pay. You will complete a mandatory ethics and dignity in service retraining program. Any further complaint will result in termination for cause. Rodrigo walked out of the room with his shoulders collapsed, broken in a way he had never experienced before, but perhaps seeing the truth for the first time. Harold then turned back to Yvonne. Ms. Barbosa, I need your help. My help? You are exactly the kind of person this bank needs to listen to. We would like to invite you to join our Customer Advisory Council. Yvonne hesitated. But I don't have an academic background in finance. That is exactly why you are the right person, Mariana said. We don't need more polished resumes. We need real people with real experience, people who understand what it means to struggle and still insist on dignity. Yvonne accepted, but with conditions. First, the same mandatory training given to Rodrigo would be required for every manager and supervisor in the bank. Second, the bank would create an independent anonymous reporting channel for customers and employees. Third, part of the bank's profits would go into a microloan fund for low-income entrepreneurs. Harold smiled for the first time that morning. Your third condition will not only be accepted, he said, it will be named the Yvonne Barbosa Fund in your honor. 3 weeks later, the bank had quietly begun to change. Rodrigo was completing his training. In one session, he listened to the story of a black businesswoman who had been humiliated by other financial institutions, and for the first time, he saw himself clearly. He even asked to help create a practical guide for branch managers. When he returned to work, it was no longer as a private banking manager. He came back as community banking service coordinator, with reduced pay and very different responsibilities. Now he served ordinary people. On his first day back, a cleaning lady came in asking for help opening a savings account. Rodrigo stood up, pulled out a chair for her, and smiled. My name is Rodrigo. How can I help you today? The woman smiled, surprised by the kindness. That evening, Rodrigo called Yvonne. Ms. Yvonne, today I helped my first client in my new role. I saw you in her. I saw all the people I mistreated. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm trying to become different. I'm trying to honor the second chance I was given. What matters most is not the mistake we made, Rodrigo, Yvonne told him. It's what we choose to do after it. Then she added, and never forget, appearances do not define anyone's worth. Months later, Yvonne visited the bank again. A plaque at the entrance read, "This institution is committed to dignity, respect, and inclusion." Customer satisfaction had risen from 62% to 89%. Rodrigo was on the first floor helping an elderly man with patience and care. Leticia, Yvonne's daughter, had joined the bank to help implement the Yvonne Barbosa Fund. As Yvonne stepped outside, she read a text from her daughter. "Mom, we just approved the first loan from the fund. It's for a woman who wants to open a small lunch cafe. She cried when she signed. She said no one had ever believed in her before. Thank you for creating this." Yvonne walked back toward the community shelter. Mr. Manuel, a homeless man she knew there, greeted her with a smile. "Miss Yvonne, I heard you're on a bank council now. Very fancy." She laughed. "I'm still the same